I'm in love with Orania.
Yes.
Can I stay in here?
You're not Afrikaner.
Afrikaners are descendants of Dutch settlers who arrived at the Cape of Good Hope on a boat in the year 1652. Would you say that Orania is a controversial town in South Africa?
Orania is definitely. I don't have to doubt it. I know that Orania is controversial.
Orania.
What is happening? Can somebody answer?
Section 235 of the South African Constitution acknowledges the right of cultural groups to self-determination. But what about the Afrikaner enclave of Orania, which also uses race to determine who can be allowed to live in that community?
The main reason why it's controversial is misperception. I think so, it's my personal opinion. Misperception about Orania. The people who have the most to say about Orania have never visited.
Just say a prayer for my city. Just say a prayer for my city.
And what are your favorite things about Orania?
Have you ever seen a 16 or 17-year-old girl walk around 9 o'clock at night? Anywhere in South Africa?
It's not common.
Okay.
Yeah.
We don't have burglar guards, and if they leave a bike somewhere, tomorrow morning it's still there.
Would you agree with me if I say that this man performed a lot of atrocities in the past?
It's our history.
But I know it's your history, but at the end of the day, a lot of people were harmed in the process. You don't think if you are embracing this, you're definitely embracing apartheid?
All right, guys, welcome to Pan-African Perspectives, your weekly dive into the issues that are affecting Africa and people abroad. I am your host, Joe Hatagwa, founder of Authentic African, and our goal is to give you guys the knowledge that you need to help us build a better Africa. So if you're looking to move, visit, or invest on the continent, that is what we talk about in general. Today, we have an interesting live stream. This was shared with me about 6 or 7 times by different people from different walks of life, and they were asking me my opinion. And I got a lot of opinions. But first, I want to kind of talk you through what you guys just saw. If you're not familiar, that was Wode Maya. He's a popular YouTuber, first person on the continent to reach 1 million subscribers that's like not a musician, right? So this is a person who's doing content about Africa, and he's actually reached 1 million subscribers, and he's quickly growing. So on the 23rd of February, he released a video titled "No Black People Allowed in South Africa's White-Only Town." So the video explores Orania, which is a controversial town in South Africa's Northern Cape province that has sparked debates for decades. For additional context, they've actually been talking about wanting to separate as a separate country. But anyway, it's a white separatist settlement established in 1991 as an Afrikaner-only community. So the town, with a population of approximately 2,400 people as of 2021, is dedicated to preserving what they consider Afrikaner culture, language, and tradition. So to live in Orania, residents must identify as Afrikaner, speak Afrikaans as their first language, and be practicing Dutch Reformed Christians. Now, so the example of an Afrikaans person would be Charlize Theron, right? She speaks Afrikaans. And so you guys might remember Charlize Theron. You might not realize that she's South African, but she actually is the first ever African to win an Academy Award for Best Actor or Actress. First ever African, Charlize Theron. She was not one that people would consider African because they didn't know, but she is an Afrikaans. She's Afrikaans. She speaks Afrikaans. In fact, her and her family all speak it. So just to give you an idea of a person you guys might recognize who happens to fall into this category, who lives in the United States. Elon Musk is not considered Afrikaans, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if Afrikaans was his first language, but I'm sure they would welcome him in. But he also supports, you know, a lot of what we're talking about here. So some key points about Orania. So its location, it's situated along the Orange River on the Karoo region of Northern Cape Province. In terms of self-sufficiency, the town has its own local government and currency. It has its own flag. It has its own college, farms, bank, and it has its own airstrip. In terms of controversy, critics label Orania as racist, while supporters argue it's a place for cultural preservation and self-determination. At least that's the way to describe it. And then for its history, originally built for construction workers in 1970, it was repurposed in 1991 as an Afrikaner settlement. So he dives into the complex issues surrounding Orania, including controversial status as the white-only town as in post-apartheid South Africa, and the ongoing debates about cultural preservation versus racial segregation. So in this discussion, you saw that he had asked the gentleman here about some of the folks who participated in apartheid, right? And what these folks will say, well, this is our history. Right. I think this kind of reminds me of the conversation in the United States about the Confederate flag. This is our history. We want to have Robert E. Lee statues up, you know, and I think it's important to understand that there's a difference between knowing your history and not forgetting and celebrating your history. We don't ever build statues for people we distaste and don't want to hold in high regard, right? So there's a difference between having it in a book and these names in a book and also creating a statue around it. I think that's the important element that we should be talking about. Now, before we get deeper into this conversation, I just want to make sure that we got full participation from everybody. You guys can hear me and you know what's going on. I realized I just went right into it and didn't even do that. So those who are watching, really quickly, just let us know where you're watching from and if you can hear me. So Ivy Prosper says, I've known about this white-only town in South Africa for 15 years now. I've seen documentaries about it over the years. It's still jarring to see that it exists. Eva says, get them out. Bold-faced lies. Are people scared? I don't know if people are scared because it's a whites-only town, so only whites can live there. Fred Bantu says, is a reflection of the shortcomings of native South Africans, I guess is what he's saying, couldn't exist elsewhere. Maybe so. That's your thought. I'll leave that to you. All right. So again, today, for those who are just joining, we are going to be reviewing Wode Maya's live stream. And it's a controversial live. We're going to be reviewing on this live stream Wode Maya's video, almost documentary style video and YouTube video on the white separatist settlement established in 1991 called Orania. So I just played a couple of minutes from it so you guys can get an idea of what to expect. This is not for everyone. You know, I definitely will say that it angers many people to hear and to see this. And so I before we get in here, I just want to make sure you guys can hear me. So Wildflower says the situation might end up like Palestine. Kate watching from the UK. I think that's an interesting observation. You mean in terms of the Israeli takeover of Palestine? What you're saying is you may think that Orania might end up like Palestine. I think the difference here, honestly, is it was land that was bought, not necessarily taken. One, and two, I think the other difference here is it's not based on religious reasons. I think people will operate with impunity and disregard for human life when it's all said in the name of religion. And so in this case, it's more about their quote unquote heritage, because many of them have been there since the many people say 1800s. These are formerly Dutch people, but they do not see themselves as Dutch. They see themselves as Afrikaans, just like there are many Black Americans who see their cultural identity, their ethnicity as Black people in America, right? Whether they're 5 generations, 10 generations in America, obviously brought in differently, but I think it even further illustrates the point that being here multi-generationally means that a lot of Black Americans see themselves as ethnically Black American, not ethnically African, right? Not just their nationality as American, but they see themselves as ethnically Black American, not African American. So you can imagine it can operate on the flip side for these Dutch folks that are like 5, 10, 15 generations in South Africa. Now, the original inhabitants were displaced. Yes, of course. Greetings from Switzerland. Wildflower says Black people cannot buy land in the UK and do what these people are doing. Yes, I think this was done a long time ago. We're talking about, more than 50 years ago. So, it was a different time. And, honestly, this land was sold to them, at least according to them. Right now, there's all kinds of questions about how the land was sold, right? And if they got fair market value. There are all kinds of questions about that. But in terms of the fact that how the land was acquired, that's their argument, is that they bought it. So Fred Bantu says the cultural argument is a smokescreen for racism. They say they love Africa. LOL, not Africans. Well, that is right. That is true. They will say they love Africa, but they won't say they love Africans. All right, so let's get back into this because there's a lot to unpack here. And I just wanted to make sure that we kind of gave that context for those of you who are just joining. Again, we are going into this whites only town in South Africa, and we're watching this video that Wode Maya did. And man, it is angering to watch. So let's get back into it. And also I want to hear from you guys as you watching along. I want to hear your thoughts and ideas. About this particular this particular YouTube video and the overall idea of Orania to begin with. So let's get into it.
Is it okay to celebrate Shaka Zulu leader? Do you know who that is?
I know who Shaka Zulu is.
He killed a lot of people. Is it fine to celebrate him?
Let me just say really quickly, that's what you call a false equivalency, right? So we're talking when we talk about intertribal conflicts, right? That is a different thing, and there are conversations that should be had in a country with their own country people. What these folks are talking about is people who came in and completely subjugated the people in the country for many years and refused to make adjustments after the world had changed and were different, right? So for example, Jim Crow America ended sort of, mostly 60s, 70s, in that time frame. Apartheid, South Africa, lasted into the 90s, so much so that Trevor Noah, the comedian slash host of what was formerly was it the Trevor Noah Show or was it the Daily Show? He had mentioned that he, as a mixed race kid, I think he could walk with his mom, but one of his parents, but the other parent couldn't walk on the side of the street publicly together, right? Just things like that, right? That were a part of, and this is, leading into the 90s, right? So, this is much more recent than what you would imagine, was happening at that time. So Afuya says Shaka was a warrior fighting an invasion. Fair. He's a controversial figure to some, though. The whole argument is conjecture. This is another form of sundown towns in the U.S. Similar, for sure. Wildflower says it doesn't matter when the land was bought, yesterday or 100 years ago. This is a massive red flag. I agree. It's a massive red flag. All right, so let's get back into some of the content. I wanted to call out that false equivalency with Shaka Zulu because this is how you justify. This is how they justify. Let me be clear. This is how they justify continuing to operate the way they do. Is they have talking points, and you'll see their talking points. So you see any group of people who want to continue any kind of racism of any sort will always have talking points that they use to justify it. So Casino for 419 says Well, first of all, Casino 419. 419 is the penal code for scamming in Nigeria. Just to be clear. So just take it from a grain of salt. Who this person is says you bringing up the past is not helping us move forward. We're tired of that suppression stuff. Okay, well, thank you for that. Stealing, trying to push racial divide, not going to help, buddy. That's the same person. Casino 419 is their name. So he said, how can we move forward instead of dwelling on the past? I think, unfortunately, Casino 419 doesn't understand that this is current. What we're watching is current. You got a lot to say, Casino 419. Okay. Anyway, so Tobogo Funani says, this is a South African, says, our government playing dumb. They sold the land during Mandela's term. No blacks are allowed. This is somebody from South Africa. Red Boy says, the white race have been, I can't really say that, been taking over South Africa due to the rich minerals and stones there. Okay, I can say that. That's fine. So Robin Nets says they should return the land to the true African people whom originated from the land. I think we're long removed from them returning that land, though. She also, that person also says it just shows that they take whatever they want and they haven't answered. They have to answer to no one's court, judge, or jury. Some folks in here from Jamaica, South Africa, Kansas City, AZ. All right, so we got people from all over the world watching. So let's get into it. A couple more comments, and then I want to really like dive back into this because it looks like a bunch of people are joining. So everybody who is joining, just to be clear, we today are going to be talking about and talking through the video that Wode Maya posted less than 48 hours ago in Orania, the whites-only town in South Africa. I decided not to do the content that I was planning to do today because it's a very controversial video and many people have been sending it to me and asking me to talk about it. So I decided no better time than the present to get right into it. So Zion says, great topic. Thank you. Lady King says, the people of Orania have plans to grow their population of inhabitants to 10K and want to become their own city. I believe Afrikaners are a threat to national security in South Africa when they involved the president of the United States. Joseph Brown says, this is a small town of 3,000 people in the middle of nowhere. I was more focused on how well planned, organized, and maintained the town is. That's what Joseph Brown says. Okay, interesting. Fred Bantu says they're Dutch, not Afrikaan. Afrikaner is a misnomer. Well, they gave themselves a new title and a new name. Eva says Black South Africans may need to do the same. Tim Black says Africans cannot be too trusting of Europeans' dominion of South Africa. Which started with one city in Cape Town. Now they say they want a city next to the province. Wildflower says Black South Africans are still traumatized. They fumbled the revolutionary bag for reform. Life is important. Kate says, why are people fighting and killing for God's land? Lady Keene says the fact that land was purchased during apartheid is suspect. Therefore, they purchased stolen land. They purchased in 91 and apartheid ended in 94. All right, I like it. A lot of good, feedback today. Self-imposed apartheid, perhaps. That's what Afia is saying. All right. So Tobogo says, for us to move on, we must correct the past. Okay, cool. And then let's see if there's anything else. We are spiritual people. We have to stop focusing on the outside and only focus on the inside. That's what some people are saying. All right. There's a lot of comments. Current events. In fact, there are parallels to U.S. politics today. There is a concerted effort to eradicate and the contributions and influence of Black and Brown people in the United States. All right, so that was B Mother in 247. All right, cool. All right. Tim Black has some thoughts. Yeah, that's what Tim Black has to say. All right, so let's get back into the video because, there's a lot more to cover, right? It's infuriating, but let's watch.
That's a question for South Africans.
This is a question for Oranians.
Yep, that's me. You're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
I don't even know how to feel right now. Should I tell you guys that I'm super scared? Because I'm about to do one of the craziest videos that I've never dreamt of. This particular video will definitely go down as one of my most sensitive vlogs ever. I mean, I'm currently in Cape Town, driving to a town that so many South Africans don't want to hear about. I mean, if I talk about South Africans, I'm talking about Black South Africans, indigenous South Africans, people that were here before the settlers came in here. I believe that most of you have heard of the town. In my whole lifetime, I never thought I would come across a town within the land of Black people where Blacks are not allowed to live in there.
That's a powerful statement. Just think about that. In a land of Blacks, there's a town where Black people aren't allowed to live. Right? So this is controversial, like I said. And I'm glad that Wode Maya did it. You know, there's a lot of people who go to South Africa and do not cover this when they go there. Like a bunch of people do content, right, when they travel to different places. And many people aren't willing to cover this topic. And I think this is an important one that needs to be, you know, analyzed, discussed, and yeah, analyzed and discussed. So so a bunch of people are just saying, so a free says, maintaining 3,000 people isn't impressive compared to millions. Stop giving credit where credit isn't due. They are probably being subsidized by the government low key. So that's what a free is saying. Wildflower says, if we were respected, they wouldn't dream to pull this type of actions. We need to admit we are not respected. Yeah, I don't think anyone disagrees with that. Respect isn't there. There are some people having some thoughts about potentially Elon having a lot to do with this. Joseph Brown says, the reality is large areas of land in East and South Africa are still owned by whites, even with majority Black governments. We need to move on. Now, to be clear, yeah, it's a majority Black government, but if you remember the ANC, in order to build a coalition government, instead of going with it, what was the Julius Malema's party, and forgive me, I'm forgetting the name of it, they decided to partner with the DA, what is called the Democratic Alliance, which is a majority white party in South Africa, which is focused on the advancement of their own agenda. And so the ANC partnered with them instead of partnering with other African or indigenous African political parties. They decided to, and this is the party, by the way, the ANC is the party of Nelson Mandela. So it's no longer the party of Nelson Mandela, it's a different party, but they decided to partner with the likes of the DA. All right, so let's get back into the video.
People out there believe that Orania is a racist model. Do you believe that whatever you guys are practicing here is racism?
No.
So what is it then?
It's a culture town. It's a culture town. It's an Afrikaner town. The narrative is out there that if you preserve your culture, you're racist, and that's not true.
But I don't think an African can leave Africa, go to Europe, and say that we just bought this land and no one is allowed to come in.
The same point people have been making, right? It's unlikely that a bunch of Africans can go buy land in Europe and say Africans cannot come here, right? Specifically in the Netherlands, where these folks are originally from, but anywhere in Europe, that just would not go over well. It would not go over well. But let's keep going. Let's keep going. I think that was a good point, and I'm glad he said that to him.
In this town, it's whites only. If I have to decode the whites only, I'm talking about Afrikaans only. So if you're a Black man like me, you cannot stay there.
We say Orania is a community for Afrikaners. It's not an issue just white in, Black out. It's a question of culture.
But someone might ask, if you want to preserve your culture, you're preserving your culture on a land that belongs to South Africans.
Well, that is another whole nother debate.
If that is the case, then let's bring the other debate.
Terrible things are happening in South Africa.
White South Africans make up about 8% of the population, but they hold about 3/4 of privately owned land in the country. In contrast, only 4% of privately held land is owned by Black South Africans, who make up nearly 80% of the country's 60 million residents.
I'm sure that you guys know that white people were not originally from South Africa. Like, they migrated in the late 17th century from Netherlands, France, England, Germany, in short, from Europe. I mean, they were immigrants in South Africa, but they forcefully colonized the people. Actually, no. They enslaved the owners of the land, the Black South Africans. This is something that Donald Trump doesn't know, by the way, so you're welcome.
So, a couple more things to bring up. There's a lot of thoughts here. Wildflower says people would judge you by the things you allow or put up with. Lady Keene says, this is Lady Keene's belief. Lady Keene believes that Wode Maya missed the mark in addressing some crucial and controversial points made, like the audacity of the Afrikaner to make the ignorant statement that Shaka Zulu killing others. Yeah, I mean, look, we're Monday morning quarterbacking, right? It's probably difficult in real time to capture everything, right? I don't think he went there to debate people. He went there to share information with folks. And as he saw things that were just patently false or things that he felt that needed to be addressed, he called them out. So I would say, look, yeah, he could have said that, but also at the same time, I can imagine what it would have been like going to South Africa, planning to film a bunch of other things, and then this comes up as part of your trip. And as you go there, you're like, I'm going to go film this. And now you're having these conversations, right? So, I think from what I've seen, I think he did the best with the time he had. But yeah, we can all look back and say, this should have been done. This should have been done differently. But yeah, I agree that there are some things that could have been said differently, but here's where we are. So Kate Briggs says, the people of Orania want to be recognized as a separate country. If other countries recognize them as a separate country, they can send weapons and arm them. This is very dangerous. That's Kate Briggs' thought process. Life is important. Kate says, Black leaders do not care about the people, only about themselves. That's what life is important, Kate says. Wildflower says, here in Europe, we as Black and brown people would never, even if we had the money to buy, these people are so territorial. Afri says, this pisses me off. Afuya says, we don't get emotional and we mobilize. Wildflower says, we didn't see these Europeans assimilate into African culture. Here in Europe, they demand you assimilate, integrate, or leave. Afri says, they are colonizers. European colonizers should never be considered natives. Afuya says, Wode Maya has done a marvelous job of exposing 21st century apartheid. So beautiful Danielle says, I appreciate you and all of the love around world. Black people really fight for our rights, and we came a long way from getting our land, going into reclaiming our power back and taking back with ours. Okay. B Mother in 247 says, Elon and his pappy believe these conditions in South Africa are now unfair to them because the native people are elevating, dare I say, catching up with them. That is what they had to say. Any other thoughts from Instagram? Protecting our this is beautiful. Danielle says, protecting our Black brothers and soul sisters and protection of our kids. We don't care about. Okay, that was interesting. So everybody, okay, so this is, do you appreciate that being done to you? That is a question. It's a good question. Wow, they're still not satisfied. This is a character flaw. Okay, listening to this makes my blood boil, especially considering that any ancestors gave their lives for this country, and they don't even own anything, and yet we are the first people. We are the first people to roam this land. Yeah, they tried to kill Ibrahim Traore. Okay, that's another conversation for a later time. We'll definitely have that conversation. Soon they will try to secede and call themselves independent. This should never be allowed. Lady Keene says, South African leadership must open their eyes. They are too passive. These people are 5,000 deep, but have military arsenal to defend themselves and lots of money coming from outside to buy more stolen land. All right, so again, there's a lot of people joining, new people joining. So just a real quick recap. Today we are watching the controversial video that was posted yesterday by Wode Maya, or less 48 hours ago by Wode Maya, where he went to the city of Orania, a whites-only town in South Africa. So that is what we are reviewing today. We're reviewing that video and everyone is giving their thoughts. So let's jump right back into it.
Last month, President Cyril Ramaphosa signed into law a bill that allows the government to expropriate property for public purposes or in the public interest, in some cases without compensation.
Well, I don't think land expropriation without compensation is a good idea. I think if you realistically look at the amount of land that the South African government has, that the big communities like the Kunyama Trust have and so on, I think the land is not the problem. The problem in South Africa is economic problem, and there's actually been research done on that, proving that people don't necessarily want land, they want a better economic future. Most people don't want to be.
So, interesting point. Again, you know, if you have if this doesn't make your blood boil and you're just watching this, you might think, okay, it's starting to make sense. People want economic security. They don't want land. But you know the number one way to ensure economic security? Land. All right, let's get back into the video.
To farm is a tough job. It's not a very rewarding job in terms of money and so on. I also think that the South African economy will collapse if there is land expropriation without compensation.
Interesting. And I want to include you in this conversation. So let me know what you think in the comment section, but don't forget to like this video because it's very important to me.
Welcome back. Orania, an Afrikaner-only town in South Africa, has weighed in on the US President Donald Trump's order halting financial aid to South Africa and offering refugee status to Afrikaners.
But this is what the Afrikaners think about Trump's offer.
We are not necessarily interested in tax dollars and handouts and help. What we want, we already got to an extent. We want recognition. We want recognition from abroad, we want recognition locally, and we want recognition from our peers.
So the question is, what does recognition mean abroad? Who are your peers? Does recognition mean secession, to become your own country? Does recognition from your peers mean European and American support in that ability to secede and become your own country? You know, when you put on, you know, I remember seeing an interview, separate interviews. I think one was with 50 Cent and one was with Jay-Z. Forgive me for using rappers, but I think it's helpful. And they both talked about how they've dealt with all kinds of people. Even Donald Trump, the president of the United States, has said this. You know, the people, just because they're wearing suits doesn't mean that they don't have the worst intent. Doesn't mean that they're not criminals like someone else who dresses in, you know, a Pushisti mask, right? I think the idea is that people think that this sanitizes criminality, right? If you see him wearing, you know, a little pin and a nice jacket and a white dress shirt, but it still doesn't make him not a criminal, right? Or in criminal acts, I should say. I think, and so I just thought I would mention that. Okay, so a lot of thoughts. So I want to go through some of them. Kay Briggs says, if Black people created this kind of city, there would be pushback. They would create tariffs and create laws to make it hard to make something like this be successful. Well, think about all the race massacres that happen in all this, you know, the towns outside of just Tulsa. You know, the Black Wall Street and all the other ones. There's many around the United States even. Wildflower says, South African government is sleeping at the wheel. This will not end well. Orania so K Briggs says Orania is not getting any pushback from the South African government. This is why they're successful in doing this. Wildflower says Rainbow Country is a dream sold to Black people, just like the American dream. Joseph Brown says Africans are free to create this kind of well-run, well-maintained cities in Africa. They have failed to do so. That's what Joseph Brown is saying. Tam says, why is South African president allowing this to happen? Can he see between the lines, or is it for his own gain? William Manful says, soon they will try to secede and call themselves independent. They should never be allowed. I think I said that before. Tebogo says, they are trying to separate Cape Town and make it a country. Yes, that is something that I've been hearing a lot. All right. So McCart says, America has all right, you know what? Let's leave that alone. We're going to get back into the video because there's a lot more to cover. Let's go.
People are a people upon themselves, and they have the right to make certain decisions for themselves. That is what we want. We don't want people's money. We don't want people's handouts. We as Orania want larger recognition, greater recognition. And I think that is not too much to ask. Actually, I think that's very reasonable.
And probably you might be wondering, what do Black South Africans feel about this?
Orania can't be a folk state. It is actually what I consider to be a micronation. It's just like a small, considered, it has certain independencies. They have their own currency.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, when I picked up on that, I realized that there's a measure of sovereignty that is not complete.
Yes.
You guys might be wondering, how did I got to know about this town within South Africa? So recently I found myself in South America on a project of connecting Africans in the diaspora with Africans living in Africa. So I found myself in Suriname and I came across this village called Dahomey. And within Dahomey, no white person is allowed in this village. So out of curiosity, I was like, you know what? I need to go find out why no white person is allowed. I was told that no white people are allowed in this village. Is that true?
Yeah.
Why?
The spirit that they have here is a warrior spirit who fought against the European in the slavery time. And every time that the warrior spirit see white people, he get aggressive, so they want to fight. That's why they don't allow white people to come here.
What will happen if a white person comes here?
Death.
And when I released the video, the next video that came into my feed was a video of a friend of mine, by the way. His name is Joshua. He's a YouTuber based in Cape Town, talking about this town within Africa that no black person is allowed in there. And I'm like, you know what? They say curiosity kills a cat, right? So I guess with the African audience that I have, I personally want to go there as an African, as a black man, just to understand what is the motive behind it. Bro, like literally they have everything in here. Wow. I made it to Orania, and believe me or not, this is not the Orania that I was expecting. Because when I got here, I found a country within South Africa. Are we looking at the Republic of Orania?
I think there's different levels to freedom. I think our dream, we as Afrikaners, we love republics. We've created maybe about 20 in South Africa. Only 2 of them survived long term. It was the Republic of the Transvaal and the Free State. So we are people who love republics. Our ideal form of government is a republic. And I hope that one day, maybe my children will see it.
His dream is to form a republic. They've attempted it before, did not work out. I'm glad it did not, but it's working out here, and it seems that his dream will likely come true. Sorry that I have new sets of headphones, guys. The last headphones that I had they died. So here we are. So it's infuriating. There's so many things that I could say. I just think it's important to call out that this is something that many people are not aware of, right? Like, I don't know how many people are aware of this, right? I know a bunch of people who have gone to South Africa, like on college tours, people that I know who've gone on vacations, and they come back never speaking of this because they're not aware of this particular town and what is soon to be a republic. And so, yeah, I think it's fascinating that it is an open secret and not too many people are aware of it. But anyway, let's get back into the video. I'll play a little bit more. I'm not going to play the whole thing all the way through because, you know, we've stopped and commented a ton of times and this video is almost 40 minutes. So, you know, we'll talk a little bit more about this and then I'll give you guys the opportunity to just go watch it on Wode Maya's channel because obviously you'll be able to watch it uninterrupted. But I did want to do this for all of you guys so that you guys can talk about it and I can hear your thoughts.
Good morning, or should I say sunrise, from Orania. Today is actually my first day waking up from Orania, and it was such a peaceful night. But it's kind of crazy to know that I'm the only black man in here. I mean, it's so crazy knowing that you just woke up in a white-only town.
We feel so patriotic about our community, so proud. It's still small, you know, but we're so proud of the things that we have achieved.
Today, Orania operates like its own micronation. The town of about 3,000 people run its own economy, and one of the backbones of their economy is agriculture. Do you guys export this?
Yes. So we'll sell it outside. It brings money into our economy. Another interesting thing, obviously, is that we can do something that a lot of farmers can't do, and that is we can plant 2 harvests in 1 year. So we plant the wheat in the summer, just before Christmas. This is harvested. It's plowed very quickly, and the farmers work 20 hours a day to get it done. They harvest, they plow, they plant.
So it's interesting, right? This is the contradiction in what he's saying. So this same guy said earlier, people want economic freedom, they don't want land. Which, by the way, I stopped the video to say, how do you get economic freedom is through land, right? Number one. Then he later said, farming doesn't make enough money. But he himself said, and Wode Maya said, a part of the way that they sustain this community is through farming. And they actually export what they make to where, might you ask? Yes, South Africa, right? So, and other places, who even knows where else? Maybe he'll mention it. But that obviously is a huge contradiction, right? He said that you don't make enough money from farming. People don't want farming; they want economic advancement. But he himself admits that that is a huge form of a way for them to sustain their lifestyles. Let's get back to it.
And then it's maize. So your next harvest is maize, and you harvest that in the winter. In June, July, and when that goes out, you've got a short time to put in the wheat again. So
all the farmers live in Orania.
Obviously, there's farms surrounding Orania as well. Okay. This is an Orania farmer, this one.
So who owns this farm?
An individual farmer owns it. It is part of Orania, but an individual farmer owns this land, and the farmer works it for their own benefit and revenue and takes the risks for themselves.
It's really mind-blowing to see a town with just 3,000 people owning their own solar farm. Does it mean that, like, you guys don't depend on the national grid?
We're still connected to the national grid.
Yeah.
So at the moment we're approximately 45% independent from the utility, and the dream is to go the whole way.
What is the idea behind this whole solar farm, and which year did it begin?
It began in 2021.
Recent.
Recent.
Very
yes.
recent. What is the main reason why you establish your own solar farm, knowing that you live within South Africa?
The main reasons for Orania is that we want to be, from the start of Orania, we wanted to be independent.
There it is. We want to be independent. It starts to say independent on many levels. We'll get back to that, but there's a couple of comments that I want to address, so let's get to them. Can Zimbabweans do this in South Africa? Great question. No. The better question is, can Nigerians do this in South Africa? Right? Tam says, and they're calling themselves Afrikaners. Yeah. Lady Keene says, what does South Africa have in place so whites like those of the National Party can never run for any office or be in leadership in South Africa? They're about racial segregation. They're not about South Africa, friends. They're enemies. So there's no, I don't know if there's anything in place, but the DA is the Democratic Alliance, which is a mostly white party in South Africa that is very much in support of what these guys are doing. Wildflower says, do they really think the Europeans can do this in China? They know who to disrespect. Black people don't demand respect. Right? That's what Wildflower says. Lady Keene says, just to be clear, you asked the question, where did Wode Maya miss the mark? I just gave an example where he could have confronted the guy's ignorance and schooled him. Wode Maya did a good job. Okay. Joseph Brown says, I have uncles who have land and have farmed all their lives in Nigeria, and they are as poor as church mice. It takes education and skill to farm at this level. Okay, that's Joseph Brown's thoughts. This is what can be accomplished when instead of corruption, stealing for self, people are focused on community growth. All right, that's what Joseph Brown says. Wildflower says, Wode Maya tried to be balanced, bless him. He tried not to roast them. Maconan says they see themselves as separate, not part of, therefore they don't belong. Interesting point. Let's get back to the video. Now, I see a bunch of people joining live now on all platforms. So just really quickly, we are in the process of reviewing Wode Maya's video that he dropped just around 48 hours ago, even less than that, about Orania, the whites-only town in South Africa that looks like they want to secede and become their own country. Everything they talk about and how they talk sounds like a separate country, right? They are doing everything they can to be separate from South Africa. And, you know, with the Democratic Alliance, or the DA, I think that's what they're called, the Democratic Alliance, having a place in the parliament, I don't know how far off they are from making that happen. So let's get back to it.
Many levels, and one level is energy. Our energy, if you're not in energy independent, you're not free.
What makes you feel so proud as an Oranian? Should I say Oranian or South African?
You're Oranian. We're Oranians. We're in South Africa. We not loose from South Africa. They are our neighbors. We pay taxes in South Africa, but we're proud Oranians.
All right, guys. We're not loose from South Africa. They are our neighbors. So, guys, I'm going to play a little bit more of this, and I want to hear more of your thoughts before we bring this thing to a close. I got about 10 more minutes or so of what we can play in this, so we're going to play a little bit more. I do have to jump to a call in just a little bit, but I want to hear the conversation and keep the conversation going. I think this is an important one. So those of you guys who are watching the replay, definitely let me know what you think in the comments. And those who are watching live as we go along, thanks for joining, and continue to let us know what your thoughts are. I think, this group has been really an active one, so I appreciate all of you guys continuing to share your thoughts. But we only have so much time that we can do this for. So, yeah. So really quickly, Tebogo says, how can I feed my family without land while they own our farms? We work on their farms, and for those of us who own land are being subjugated by what they said whites. They poison our animals and beat up our workers. Now, this is from a South African. So Red Boy 83 says they want a larger recognition outside in entities to learn how to simplify, how to move in and push African people out. That's what they said. The real Carlito says, hello, this may not do, they may not do their research before they visit these places. Okay. Oh, because I was saying that many people go to South Africa and come back and never even know about what's going on with Orania. Ms. Way 2024 says the only solution, my brothers and sisters, is to get up, stand up for your rights, right? The real Carlito says, I've seen this guy make some good moves. I guess you're talking about Wode Maya. William Manful says the African Union and the SADEC, which must be some kind of southern group of Africa, which I'm not too familiar with, must stop this crap. If it becomes a republic, it will be harder to reverse this what he called white supremacist oasis. Okay. Lots of people don't know this. A lot of people are very upset. Okay. Kara Lumsden says, not all Africans are welcome there. What about those moving to other countries, continent, islands, and those that are homeless? The black folk feed predominantly. I'm out. Okay, Kara. Thanks for sharing. Goodbye. Lady Keen says, another black guy visited Orania and an old white man stopped him for walking in the neighborhood. He made the black call the white guy Wode Maya is with. He spoke Afrikaans. Someone needs to interrupt. Makayo Daniel says, why not imitate their model? So that's a question. Where imitate this model? You mean in Europe, or do you mean in the US, or where? And where would that be allowed? Makayo. Where would that be allowed? Now, I could say doing it on the continent of Africa, right? Buying land and doing this. There's many people doing that currently. There are people buying land in Ghana, people buying land in South Africa, people buying land in Nigeria who are looking to try to build self-sustaining communities, for sure. But I think what the issue is because it's being done on the continent of Africa, right? That's what people are really having issues with, is that people of European descent are doing this on the continent of Africa. So Wildflower says, let's do this in Europe. That might be difficult. It might be difficult to do this in Europe. All right, let's give it a few more minutes and let's watch a little bit more of this.
Schools in Orania do not teach in English as the rest of South Africa, but rather Afrikaans. Do you have a school in here?
We have two high schools, primary and secondary, and then we also have a college, tertiary training. We are dreaming to build our own Afrikaans university.
And you teach in Afrikaans?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Everything we do is Afrikaans. And studies show that children who are taught in their mother tongue perform better than children who are taught in another language. Like
are you against the educational system in South Africa?
Well, I'm definitely against the Bala law that's currently being implemented.
What is that?
That is a law that gives the state control of the schools rather than the parents of the schools. So we're very much against that. I think it's the state grabbing the power of schools, taking away people's rights. There's a lot of religious issues with that. There's lots of cultural issues with that. So South Africans are actually very angry about that. That's why the schools that we built here, we get zero state funding. We don't get a cent from the government. And it's also not expensive. So all the extra money that we need for our schools, we have to raise with projects.
So does it mean that like all the people that study in this school are from Orania? Do you get people out of Orania?
Yeah, just, surrounding farms and so on also come here. And then the college, tertiary training, people from around the country also come to study here.
You can study here, but you can't live in here.
Well, they can. All of them can apply for the right to citizenship in Orania, definitely.
Citizenship? the college in Orania.
Okay, let's keep playing actually.
Orania don't believe in theory only, but rather practicals, because they believe that the children are the ones that will be able to build the future of Orania.
Now, the question came up earlier, why don't we replicate this? And I do think to some degree, they have taken on some of the ways that many people have talked about things that other people in other groups should be doing in other areas, right? So being self-sufficient, they don't get any government funding, they are teaching technical skills. So these are all things that we might say, oh, this is interesting, we should replicate that. And we wouldn't even have an issue with it if this was being done in Amsterdam. It might be something we'd study and say, oh, that's interesting. Because what they're executing in terms of building their town, outside of the fact that they only allow Afrikaans to live there, might seem interesting. I think the problem is when what they're doing is, and I think what he also talked about is the university of people from the surrounding areas. I think what they mean by the people from the surrounding areas have to be Afrikaans who may not actually just live in Orania. I think that's who we're talking about, is able to go to the school there. Excuse me. Joseph Brown says, imitate their model in Africa. Let's make our own town village look like this. My village in Africa has dirt roads, no running water, no constant electricity. Wildflower says, let's buy land in Europe and live alone to preserve our culture without Europeans. They force us to teach our children their languages in our schools in Africa. GRTV says, I wish Wode Maya had not bothered to go there. Why? To hear them talk rubbish? Well, I think it's to share the information with the rest of the world. Many people don't know about this, right? I mean, I knew about it, but I mean, I'm sure there are many people in the audience that are watching this now or the replays who may not have been aware, right? Which is why I decided to comment on this video. GRTV says they are subsidized to an extent. That's why they're able to be self-sufficient. Todd Phillips says you're a liar. They only allow Christian Afrikaans to live there. It's a Christian community. You liar. Okay. Who, me? I'm a liar? Is that what you're saying? Okay. If I said Afrikaans from outside of there, okay, maybe I should have said Afrikaan Christians. Okay. Okay, he says you must believe in the Trinity to live there. Okay. Anyway, Joseph Brown says this is how countries, towns, and cities in America are run. Not necessarily. Have you seen Flint, Michigan? So Mukayo Daniel says, so let me get this straight. Do you want them to go back to Europe? That's a question for all of you guys. Do you guys want them to go back to Europe? Todd Phillips says they don't rely on people to do manual labor. They do it all themselves. Joseph Brown says, what country are you from, Wildflower? Okay, let's not even get into questions with each other. Life is important cases. Thank you for sharing this information. It's an eye-opener. You see, not everybody is fully aware of this stuff, so it's important to share it. And also, let's stay civil in the comments, guys. I mean, we may have disbeliefs or disagreements in different beliefs, but at the end of the day, the goal here is to learn from each other, not to berate each other. Light don't come. All right, so let's get back into the video for a little bit more, and then we're gonna call it.
You have a college in Orania.
We identified the need to train our people in physical skills, plumbing, electrical work, and masonry to build houses, and that's called skills. And that's why we started the college. In 2019, we had only 5 students, 2020, 50, and now there's about 124. We're expecting more than 200 next year.
So this is more like a plumbing practical class?
Yes.
Wow.
So the first groups of students made everything, and now the second and third and fourth generation, they get to use everything the first guys built.
Their life.
All right, guys, I'm going to leave it there. I mean, this has been a really great discussion, but we are at the hour, and I unfortunately have to get on another call. I know this is a very important topic. I wish I could have done this over the next two hours, but this gives you an opportunity to go to Wode Maya's channel and to watch this video. It is a great video, as I said before. I'm going to put it in the comments. I'm going to put it in the comments so you guys can you can find it, and not in the comments. Sorry, I'm going to put it in the description on YouTube so you guys can find it and you can watch it yourselves. I want to thank you guys all for joining and having this conversation. Continue the conversation in the comments, the comment section, in the replay. The replay will be up. The replay is up now, so you can just go on YouTube and find the replay and continue this conversation in the comments. I think this is something that it brings up a lot of emotions for a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. And I think it's a conversation we should continue to have. I mean, it's an important one. So with that, I want to say thank you guys all for joining and for giving me your thoughts and your ideas and engaging in the comments. If you know anybody who is interested in knowing more about things like this on the continent, make sure you share this with them. Anybody planning to move to South Africa or anybody who's ever decided they wanted to go. I think it's important to share this with them and make sure they are aware. And so with that, I want to thank you guys all for watching. I will see you all on the next live stream. Bye, guys.